Hello everyone, how you going? And welcome to American and Australian react to the hardest Aussie accents to understand. Now, I feel as though it's fairly common knowledge in the English-speaking world that there is definitely a few nuanced little things where you go, I cannot even believe that it's English anymore. Take parts of the UK and of course Australia and even Canada and all these places, you're just going, I don't really understand you anymore. But perhaps that is just because my ear isn't in tune to it at all, because it is from the other side of the earth. And so let's just see how difficult truly are these.
Oh, well, it's really quite funny. I was in bed sleeping at 2 o'clock this morning. My wife comes in and says, oh, the shop's been, someone ran into the shop. And I said, oh, what?
She's just laughing.
Of course. No?
I can understand better this time.
This time?
Because you had
last time.
What's this time compared to last? I mean, maybe she has heard or I guess maybe even experienced it before apparently, but that is amazing. Even just seeing their facial expressions going, really just trying to lean in, go, okay, all my brain power is just going towards just listening here. And meanwhile, Mia from Australia just going, yep, yeah, I remember seeing this interview. Yep, I can even picture the guy, for goodness sake. To be fair though, I do think that in recent years, this problem, if you want to call it that, has kind of been solved a little bit more in terms of if people are just watching videos from the other side of the planet day in, day out, and consuming all of this international media, whether it's Americans watching Australians or Australians watching the Welsh or whatever it may be, it definitely just tunes your ear in an entirely different manner.
Very strong. There is stronger, I'd say, but definitely, yeah, definitely on the strong side for sure. He was just saying like, I forgot the beginning what he was saying, but like he woke up, his wife like came in and like woke up and someone had like, someone was at the store, like someone was at the front of the store and he was just saying that he's only got his underwear on. Yeah. And he ran out to check or something like that. Yeah. So it's kind of the, sure. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not hard to understand for Australians, no.
Level 1.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure there's.
I guess the main thing is the fact that he wasn't even speaking that fast either. He was just going, oh, and then I went out the front and there was just a car through the entire front of the store and I went, oh, nah, that's not, and he just went on from there. Whereas really, if you just start speaking really, really quickly and then you just go on from there, then it becomes a lot more difficult. Oh, okay.
Hey boys, the surf's up. It's going off, bro. The girls were staring at me while I surfed.
Why are you in there with your shirt on, dude?
What? I don't like to take off my shirt, bro. I feel uncomfortable. Is that a problem?
Oh, I understood everything.
Nice.
So
okay.
yeah, he was going surfing, and then he's like, all the girls were like looking at me or something, right? And then he was, they're like, why'd you surf with your shirt on? A very thick accent.
Yeah. Although this is a specific like type of Australian accent because it's like people specifically from like from Greece or from like Italy or from like an ethnic sort of background that's like not just like white Australians like tend to have this accent. It's like we say like wog, like woggy accent, because his YouTube is super wog, so he's making fun of that like really accentuating that accent.
At least she did go ahead and actually mention that, because that is the entire spiel. The fact that his entire channel is named Superwog, and so from that point of view, you can definitely make fun of it because he's making fun of it in the first place. And of course, it is not in a particularly mean or nasty way. It's just him playing a character throughout the different life circumstances that his character has to play. By the same metric, I guess if you wanted to take more of an extreme exaggerated example, his character's dad would definitely be towing a line, but by the same metric, I have heard people to that extent as well.
So not every Aussie sounds like that, but if you have that like background, you tend to sort of have that. It's kind of like you know the New York like Italian like that like hey, I'm walking here like that kind of thing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like the Australian equivalent of kind of that.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like a mix of two different accents.
Pretty much, yeah.
It does sound different.
Yeah,
than a lot of the Australian accents that I've heard. It was going kind of like up and down a lot, but I wasn't getting like no, like that type of. I really don't want to offend you, but like that type of like rounded out vowel sound, I wasn't getting that as much.
True.
So that's why it sounded a little different.
I'm Italian, so like I've been around that accent with like family friends and everyone. So like and friends at my school, like majority were like Greek or Italians as well. So like they all kind of use this sound and accent. So
I love how she just said use that accent, where realistically it's not using a particular accent, it's just the accent is the accent, what it is. But no, they absolutely hit the nail on the head when they said it was a mixture of multiple accents, and I guess I've never really thought about it before, but I can only imagine other English-speaking countries would also have it. I mean, I think the UK is a bit difficult because so often it's just the UK accent variation, not actually migration accent variation. But by the same metric, I guess if you take some of the stereotypical YouTubers between Superwog and then Uncle Roger and all these different English, but then just mixing in these accents, they're all in there from all over the world. Ooh, okay.
Well, no, I actually grew up in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then I came to Sydney to go to the National Institute here and then got catapulted out, and I thought, well, I'll give it 5 years and see what happens.
All accents are very different. That was like almost very like posh almost sounding.
Totally,
right?
totally, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she like grew up in Melbourne, and my short-term memory isn't the best, but she was like easy. Yeah, she was easy to understand.
And it's interesting because I could immediately see it on her face. Yes, she did still lean in just to make sure she was properly listening, but immediately you could just see that she was having a much easier time digesting the entire, I guess, vocabulary that was coming at her in comparison to before, where she was just going, I'm just trying my best, but I really don't know what I'm listening to.
I haven't heard this accent a lot, actually.
It's more, I'd say, like, it's definitely more poshy. Like, I'd say people that are a little more, like, it's kind of in, you know, England, how there's that very poshy, like, British kind of accent. Right. And then there's, like, the different variations. So I'd say, like, for Australia, this would be our, like, most kind of posh sounding. So it's almost borderline, like, British. Like, there's a lot more British to it.
It sounds almost like the British accent in a way.
Yeah.
Like a mix of two.
Yeah, I can only imagine that is because it is very slow and very thought out and very precise with how and where every single syllable goes within the sentence, and really it just is unlike what a uncultivated Australian would be speaking like, where it's sped up and the entire syllable structure is just rearranged just to suit it so you can just go fast.
To sound more like upper class, but like I don't think anyone necessarily goes out of their way to like try and sound like that. I think it's just more your circumstances, right? Like if you're sort of, I guess, more well off, or if you've had like a lot of high education and all that, like it just cultivates that sort of sound.
Yeah.
So so I don't think people, I don't know, like put it on, so to speak, but yeah, it's very much like news broadcaster Australian. Like you hear everyone in the news, presenters, like announcers, all use this kind of sound mostly. Okay. So I guess maybe they put it on to a degree to sound
probably,
more.
Because even in the States, like there's that type of voice.
Right, the presenter kind of.
Right, so I'm sure also in Australia.
I mean, look, I definitely understand where they are both coming from, but by the same metric, I'm not too sure if I agree because, I mean, I've heard so many different people speak, and Kate Blanchett, who was the woman that was speaking, is, in terms of the cultivated scale, very highly cultivated, where you compare that to, I don't know, Carl.
Righto, I know you will be. You'll be up me for the rent anyway.
Now, that is certainly not what I would consider to be a cultivated accent, but my goodness, he's been at the top of the TV chart for many, many, many years now for, I guess, multiple different reasons, and it isn't just his voice that has kept him there. Which I guess in a kind of nice way should allow people to be a bit more confident with what they are saying. You know, they don't have to go out of their way just to sound like that person and that person and that person and the person before them. They can just be themselves. Because if nothing else, like she said, every single person is raised and cultivated with the environment around them, and whether that's just with European heritage and so you're just getting this, or whether it's with whatever it may be, Asian heritage or just straight true blue Australian, whatever it may be, you don't have to sound particularly like one person. Here we go.
Pregnant snake, she's got like a dozen babies in her belly, and so what we have to do is we have to ultrasound her, check out the babies, exactly the same way as you can perform an ultrasound on a pregnant woman, you know, check out the little bits and pieces that are going in there.
Yeah.
Come on.
This is the accent that I'm familiar with. And the babies in the ultrasound. I really can't imitate it, but I love this accent so much.
The typical what people associate with Australian accents, right? Yeah. Of course.
Oh yeah.
He's like one of the most famous Australians, and like everyone knows him.
Ever.
Yeah, for real.
Amazing.
He's an icon.
I love the fact that he's an icon for those reasons. He's not an icon because he did something and ended up in jail or anything like that. No, he's an absolute true blue Australian. Like they said, just general, raised in nothing fancy, nothing like that. Just, he just went out and did what he loved, and he was so passionate about it, and that's what made people fall in love with him.
To me, like the accent goes kind of up and down. With the babies, like, you know, it kind of goes up and down, so it's a bit more stronger in that way. Yeah, and the vowel sounds, like I said before, is like really rounded out. Yeah, I feel like that's how I can really tell if it's an Australian accent.
Right, right.
Like his is quite on
His
the
is quite on the strong
stronger
side. I was gonna say it probably borders like the one that I know is like that strong one. If it's the steps, it's like the highest one, the highest step of like very Australian sounding. The person I associate broad accent with the most is like one of our ex-prime ministers, Julia Gillard. Like she has a very typical sort of broad Australian accent.
Wow, that's not one that I would have picked, but I guess she is definitely correct there. I mean, the one that I think people generally associate, or at least the one I've heard people associate, is Hugh Jackman having a generalized broad Australian accent, but I don't think that that is too overpowering either. The only thing that I do now wonder is, because she seems to be able to pick the language structure and the vowel sounds and everything out of the Australian accent, and she knows that, and she seems to have enough examples as to what that is, how well would she go just picking the Kiwi accent apart from the Australian accent, because they are different, but generally speaking, they're pretty darn similar.
The person I associate broad accent with the most is like one of our ex-prime ministers, Julia Gillard. Like she has a very typical sort of broad Australian accent, so that's like a good example for that. You know, if you want to look it up, but I'd say yeah, it's probably the most common accent that's you can hear around everywhere.
I mean, to be fair, that's why it's broad. Oh, general.
The last couple of months, it just felt like you wanted to get to the end, and all of us were like, how many more days are left? How many more days? And this last week, I was sitting there, and as they wrapped me, all of a sudden it sort of hit me like, oh, wait a second, I didn't soak this up enough. I didn't kind of make the most of it. I didn't say goodbye to everyone or whatever. And
Yeah, I'd say that's also kind of broad, right? But also like posh in a way, a little bit.
I was gonna say, if anything, Chris Hemsworth is kind of between Steve Irwin and like Kate Blanchett, kind of in that more towards like the sort of broadish sound, but like definitely not more than Steve Irwin. I was getting that confused with broad then. So then this is the one that you'd hear the most.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is where you're getting the almost gruffness and roughness that comes with Chris Hemsworth being Chris Hemsworth, but it is more of a, I guess, refined accent in that regard. And I guess that also could be because of his acting career just needing to be a bit more refined and eloquent in his speech, if nothing else, just so, I mean, if you go all the way to the other end so he doesn't sound bogan while he's trying to be Thor, like, I don't know if that would be selling as well. To be fair though, in the exact same sentence, or I guess even in the exact same scene, you have Korg just running around, just a full-blown Kiwi accent, no holds barred, and so I guess maybe it would work.
It's so funny like hearing him with that accent because watching him, he's always using the American accent.
Right, yeah.
I didn't even know he was
was
Australian. Like
Wow.
I mean, for a little bit, you know, I learned pretty quickly. But I remember watching the movie, and then I learned after, I think, the first movie I watched with him, and I was like, wait, what?
Really?
Yeah.
This is American accent, like, convincing?
It's so good.
Really?
Yeah, it's so good.
I can hear him, like, trying to put it on. I guess because I'm so, like, used to the Aussie, so I'm always like, it kind of sounds a little, like, oh, it keeps slipping a little into Aussie, but I guess if you can't tell, that's really good.
I can't really tell. Yeah, I think also because like sometimes a very tiny slight Australian accent, you know, it may sound like, you know, with the R's you use A. Like in Northeast we also do that. So if it may get like a little
right.
Yeah,
it can slide and
And I think it's also just helped by the fact that he is usually playing these kind of rough characters, and that kind of vocabulary generally can cover it up as well, perhaps. I mean, I'm also trying to think and even just remember him even using an American accent, because I guess even just take Thor, is he using an American accent in there? Because I feel as though he's meant to be like Asgardian, but I feel as though he's just Australian in that regard.
I think for a lot of Australians, yeah, because like our tongue, we haven't trained it in the same way because we don't pronounce R's like at the end of words the way Americans do. So like that's what Australians struggle with the most, is maybe that R sound, like really using that tongue to like accentuate that sound, which is why I think when I hear Aussie actors do American accents, you can kind of hear, it's always the R sound that will slip at times, because it's hard to keep it sounding really strong, I'd say, because we haven't trained that as much in our tongue. This is interesting.
it was fun because I haven't heard variations of the accent.
Yeah.
So it was interesting hearing the different accents and kind of like how it became
To be fair to her, that absolutely makes sense, because it isn't until you get to hear them back to back to back to back like this where you go, oh, that isn't just different people sounding differently. It is actually an accent that is coming in there and just actually making their pronunciation change. And they go, oh, this might be, yes, very slow and very almost British and pronounced very well. And then you just go to the first guy and just go, oh, and then, yeah, a car just came through the window and I didn't even know what happened. Like, that is such a massive difference there. It's very bouncy compared to very eloquent. So I would love to know, if you do conjure up an Australian accent in your mind, who out of what we've seen today, or to be honest, even if we have not seen them today, but who fits that mold correctly? Because is it Steve Irwin? Is it Chris Hemsworth? Or maybe it's even going to be Crocodile Dundee or something like that. Just those general and those broad Australian accents just have to be chart toppers in comparison to every single other person.